Okay, I think I have the sound done again better. Hello everyone. Yes, it's good. Now, let's get on with it then. I apologize from that. Sometimes my computer just hates me, even though it's a new one. It hasn't been shown the hammer yet. But I think this was my fault. I was messing around with some definition. So I know I'm up to it. So let's get on and explaining what you guys saw but you didn't hear. So let's start the hangout again. Um, and here we oh crap. There we go. Just check. Yes, there we go. Okay. Now, take two. Last year I talked about this subject which I'm talking about today. It was me and Modwayne Alaron. We talked about we discussed the production of alcohol in the ancient past. And today I'm presenting another article. Well, this one's from 2016. I did not talk about this in its context, which is I talked about we talked about general production of alcohol in the past. That there's evidence evidence for production of fermented drinks in areas of the Middle East, or so I should say Western Asia and elsewhere, before the advent of agriculture. Now, this article, which I'm going to discuss today, poses the question of, did the production of alcoholic beverages, in this case a beer, fermented grain, did it impulse was it the impulse did it bring about agriculture? My analogies aren't working today, I apologise. So basically, ever since the Brainwood Symposium in 1953, Braidwood et al., there has been a debate as to whether beer, that's fermented grains in this case, not the modern beer that we know that has hops and there's a whole lot of procedure that it goes about making it, whether it was beer and not bread that first made for the domestication of crops and cats and voit, based on the discovery of grain at sites of Yamo, and the suggestion of archaeobotanist Sauer. Braidwood inquired whether or not the discovery of fermentation could have been a spark that triggered the targeted selection of certain grains, certain foodstuffs, which ultimately domestication of domestication of certain crops. Fermented grains, which see its starch transformed into sugars, is well known for its beneficial properties, including the increase in nutritional values. Yes, fermented grains itself, it increases in nutritional value because sugars are more nutritious. They give you more energy than just starch. Your body has to break it down, and that it in itself takes more energy, where if you have a simpler molecule of sugars, etc., they are more easily digested by your body, so they are more nutritional. What was this? Oh yeah. So, it is well known for its beneficial properties, including the increase in nutritional value. Also, it makes it easier to digest, as I said. Indeed, the participants of the aforementioned symposium eventually came to the consensus that early grain crops would have been far better suited for the production of gruel or beer than bread. Now, I pose this question of to produce beer and bread. Well, let's start with production of bread. Bread, what you have to do is you gather grains and then you grind them down to make a flour, where you add water to make a dough, and then you cook the dough. Now, it has been shown that this process occurred way before domestication. We have modern analogous or comparative studies of where anthropologists have studied modern hunter-gatherers like the San peoples of the Kalahari in southern Africa, the Australian Aborigines, and certain other peoples, where agricultural peoples, pre-agricultural hunter-gatherers, where they would gather the grains and produce a sort of bread. They would grind them down, roughly grind them down or pound them to produce what is basically a flour cake mixed with water, cooked over a fire, and you have bread basically. Now, the process to making beer, you add more water to the bread, the flour, and you let it sit. That is the fermentation. It becomes a drinkable substitute for bread. It is slightly easier to digest, but it can go wrong, obviously. So that is why we have to take into consideration that production of bread is in itself the same process that you do use to make beer, this type of beer, but you just had more water to produce beer. But the fermentation process can go wrong because it can be contaminated by other by microorganisms, etc. So bread is more stable to produce because after you mix it with water, you cook it instantly. But with beer, you have to let it sit. Especially considering the glooms of primitive domesticated plants would have adhered to the grain. I don't know, I'm not a botanist, so I don't know what the glooms are, but I think it's that bit of the grain that is attached to the stem of the flower plant, I think. I don't know, I'm not a botanist, as I said. So even though this idea of fermentation was raised frequently in subsequent years, Katz and Voigt 1986, but I know Dr. Katz and Dr. Voigt. I read articles when I was studying archaeology, so I sourced them a lot when I was doing my degree, and not on this particular subject, but on other anthropological and archaeological studies of the Neolithic, in fact. So yes, so in the particular context of the previously noted advantages, the higher nutritional value afforded by this process, it was considered improbable that beer was actually produced. I put it that we know that from as I previously stated, when I did what's happened in archaeology with Modwayne Alleran about the production of alcoholic beverages in prehistory, even before this period. Yes, it's improbable, but it's not impossible. The production of an alcoholic beverage, it does take a step extra to the production of bread, but it's still feasible. We did make them. In fact, we have easy ways of obtaining naturally fermented beverages and so on. In fact, all primates look for these extra really ripe fruits that are beginning to go off. They are basically fermenting, be they on the ground or still in the tree. Chimpanzees. There is a study which I was going to talk about today, but or even link it, but I talked about it with Aileron when we had with Mod when we had that episode of on production of alcoholic beverages, and primates look for these fruits, and not just primates, even elephants. We talked about elephants as well, so they can get that little extra high, but they also get more nutrition out of them, because, like I said, it's easier to digest. There's more nutritional value in the fermentation itself. So I was going to talk about the another study of chimpanzees which look for this fermented sap of certain trees by themselves, but I will probably talk about it some other time. So more recently over there, the discussion was revisited in a contribution by P. McGovern in 2009, who presented preliminary results from chemical studies made of 2 stone vessels from the pre-pottery Neolithic necropolis of Kortik Tepe. PPN stands for pre-pottery Neolithic. That is the period of the Neolithic before, as the name suggests, not pottery was developed, not invented, as we know from sites from prehistoric sites of the Paleolithic, Upper Paleolithic, especially in the Czech Republic. There is a site dated to 32,000-ish years from the present, which had ceramic figurines. So the firing of clay to produce ceramic materials was known before this period, before the pre-pottery Neolithic. The pre-pottery Neolithic may have occurred. The pottery may have been rediscovered, or someone had an idea to say, okay, they've been making statuettes or figurines or whatever. Let's make a bowl. That's just small talk. But anyway, the pre-pottery Neolithic is a period of the Neolithic that started about 12,000 BC, from the present 12,000 BC, to around 7 or 8,000 BC, more or less, when pottery was developed. And these vessels, the 2 stone vessels, yielded traces of tartaric acid that accrues during the wine production process. So when fruit ferments, it leaves tartaric acid behind as a deposit. These are from Göbekli Tepe, the famous oldest temple on earth, and they are analogous to the other 2 vessels, from Kortik Tepe. That O has with the 2 dots in Turkish has a funny ch. I think it has a funny ch sound. So yes. Okay. Further chemical analysis was conducted by M. Zarkow, Technical University of München, Stefan, on 6 large limestone vessels from Göbekli Tepe. These ones. These are in situ, in the place where they were there. They haven't taken them out yet. They had a capacity of 160 litres, and they are found in the site, in situ, in the pre-pottery Neolithic B complex contexts of the site. Now, PPN, pre-pottery Neolithic, is divided into 2 phases: the pre-pottery Neolithic A and B. The PPN A because my tongue's not, I can't drink yet, so I can't water my mouth, and the pre-pottery Neolithic, if I say it too many times, it becomes a tongue twister. Anyway, the pre-pottery Neolithic period was divided into two phases. The initial phase was PPNA, pre-pottery Neolithic A, and that was the initial phase of the transition into beginning of agriculture. There's no agriculture in that period yet. While the pre-pottery Neolithic B, that is when agriculture, we can identify in the archaeological record evidence as complete evidence for the beginning of the agriculture and domestication in plants and animals. So these were from this later pre-pottery Neolithic, which then transitioned into pottery Neolithic until the Bronze Age, the metallic ages. So already during the excavation, it was noted that some vessels carried a grey-black adhesions materials on the side. The first set of analysis made on these substances returned partially positive for calcium oxalate, which develops in the course of soaking, mashing and fermenting of grain. So we have now circumstantial or some evidence for the actual fermentation process due to the calcium oxalate. Now, although these intriguing results are only preliminary, that was 2016. I'm sure that by now, I'll try and find. I'm trying to find some updated. If not, they haven't released it yet, because I'm using the Göbekli Tepe diaries. These guys are the ones that are studying the Göbekli Tepe in the field, so they are the sources of this article. So yes, production. So these are just preliminary results. They provide the initial indications of the brewing of beer at Göbekli Tepe, thus provoking renewed discussion related to the production and consumption of alcoholic beverages at this early time. Further, they are particularly significant delighted results from genetic analysis undertaken by the team of from the Norwegian University of Life Sciences in Oslo, which suggested that early domestication of grain occurred in the vicinity of Karakadag. Karakadag is the area where, basically very near Göbekli Tepe, it's the area, geographical area of that these sites are inserted in. Now, just before I finish, I'll get you beer or alcoholic beverages. Apart from as suggested in this article, their nutritional value, there is also a safe way to consume drink. We have historical contexts where up until the mid-19th century, 1850s, 40s, 60s, when the Western world basically redid safe, clean water for consumption that the Romans had. Up until then, people would most cities and towns were near a water source, obviously, and the people would their waste, sewage waste, and everything was dumped into the river, the same place where they would obtain their water to drink. Now you can see where that's coming from. If you dump sewage and all the diseases that you can catch, from cholera to typhus to other ones which I don't know, not cholera, typhus, dysentery, etc. The diseases which just absolutely blow you away. You would not drink from the water sources that they were provided. So what was the safest beverage that you can drink? Beer, because the fermentation process in itself kills a lot of microbes. so it becomes a safe source of drinking material. They would have been given to children even, because instead of killing them by giving them a glass of water, you would not kill them by giving them the glass of 2% or 3% beer. That's the alcoholic content. Most of these drinks that they're talking about here, the beer that they're talking about, the lightly fermented beverages, would have had 2 to 3% alcohol, less than modern beer. So much less than modern beers. So yes. Now they would have had, putting this hypothesis that maybe they lived, not talking about Göbekli Tepe, but other places, maybe they lived in sources that the water was suspect. Even Göbekli Tepe, because located on the hill, and I don't know how far the nearest water source would be, but I'm sure that it wouldn't be that. Maybe no natural water source rivers are completely safe. Springs are, but rivers are not. So that's the context inserted about fermentation beverages, which are much safer, apart from being nutritionally better. So once again, we must acknowledge that the production of alcohol and the domestication of grain are interrelated. Of course they are. And is the production of bread interrelated with the production of alcohol? Because the process from, like I said, from making bread to making beer, you just add more water and let it stand instead of cooking the dough. So yes. Finally, the aforementioned insights also provoke new questions relating to the use and consumption of alcohol at Göbekli Tepe, which may have been in the context of religiously motivated feasts and celebrations. Not surprisingly, such events were well attested in the ethnographic literature, yes they are, as a means of attracting and motivating large groups of people to undertake communal work and projects. Of course, apart from it, to recap and to answer this part, yes, we know that that the alcoholic beverages could have been used as a currency and a motivation to get people to do work for the community, quote unquote, and leaders, etc. The pyramids themselves were built by labourers, which were paid in beer and foodstuff. There are records, hieroglyphic records, of telling beer and the foodstuffs that were distributed to the workers. So there was a currency. Also, it was used, the beer, the alcoholic beverages were used in their religious practice to possibly get people, well, you give people alcohol, they have reacted to it, as we all know. They get high, they can hallucinate, etc. So it could be used to bolster the religiosity, meaning, and of what they were doing. And that's another thing that alcohol does. It gets you into good mood. So to cap this off, to conclude, alcoholic beverages were safe drinking source. They could have been and were used as a currency and in religious festivals, and they were used before. I talked about, and I'll probably link in the description the video which me and Modwayne talked in, that they were produced before the domestication, so they were a continuum. And this time, I know the sound got through. I will end it here, and again apologize for the first tentative first try. And again, I'll say hello everyone. Hello John, hello Beej, hello Davey, hello Silurian Gimro. Welcome to my stream. Hope you liked it. Hope I didn't disappoint too much. Who else is here? I'll say hello to Warped. She was in the other one. Hello, Ben. Ricard, how are you, mate? Basically today, I will end it here. I'm doing these shorter shorter programs because I think they hold the attention of people more readily. So that's more or less we'll do in the future. I hope you guys like it. Instead of having an hour and a half or half an hour, I'll try and make them about 15 minutes because it's stretching it out now because the technical problems I had before. So at this point, I bid you all a good night and say till next time. Bye bye, everyone.